The Backrooms movie has been something I've been thinking about for a while. Not because it's like so profound in what it's trying to do or say, but I can't decide whether this movie is god awful or amazing. I didn't really plan to make a video on this, but because I saw it a bit late, but I've just been thinking about it. I just kind of want to talk about my problems, my pros, and then at the end of the video, I'll talk about some pretty terrible defenses for the film and some pretty terrible criticisms levied toward the film. So I guess we can start with my positives. I absolutely love the vibe for this film. Like, it's the vibe of a film that I would say is a 10 out of 10. I adore, like, how it feels. Like, the found footage, one-shot sequences are all great. The actors do a good job at portraying the attitude and how the tone should be. Yeah, I mean, the vibe's great. I do kind of like the theme as well. You could say there's a lot of themes going on at once. Like, there's a theme of loneliness, there's a theme of directionlessness, and how life all leads back to one place. And remembering to remember the smaller details, which is why the Backrooms does. There's a lot with that. But, like, I do think the theme is pretty obvious. It's loneliness and directionlessness, which is shown in both the Backrooms and Clark and the characters. Clark is very directionlessness with his life, which is shown by, is he a sultan of the Ottoman Empire, or is he a pirate? You know, that's one thing that was like, I mean, it's not very subtle. Like, I'm pretty sure Mary, the nurse, there was like, oh, so you don't have direction in your life. You're like this you're like this plate, has no ending. It's all going one place, directionless. Oh, are you a sultan or are you a captain? You seem to lack direction in this, and that's shown by the Backrooms, a never-ending place that loops in and out of itself and is it's unlimited. It just keeps going, and you know what it doesn't have? Direction. I feel like that theme's very obvious. And loneliness. They literally just talk about Clark and Mary are both isolated and alone in their own ways, and how Mary's mother basically trapped her daughter in her house because of a mental condition, which is why she became a therapist, so she could help people like her mother. And then in the dining room scene, she realized that she couldn't help people. Like, the themes are pretty obvious. And they're pretty good. I think they're good. It worked for the Backrooms, and yeah. Now, the last praise I truly have for this film is I love the lore. It's really, really good. It's really good in its lore, this film. The whole stuff with the Backrooms is really interesting. I like some of the explanations that they give for it. That, it's everything, everywhere, all at once. Like the movie. No. But also, that's really more or less an entity remembering things. But the more it remembers, the more it gets wrong. And I like how they showed at the end of the movie that, sure, you can think Mary escaped, whatever the hell Mary happened to her, but she's still in the Backrooms via her still life. Which, I'll talk about that ending in the later. But I really do love the lore. I think it's very neat, seeing this place. I think it's a really cool environment. I quite liked it, how there's these tears in time. I know they couldn't really fully go into the lore, which is a somewhat negative on my part. But I'll explain it later. And overall, yeah, that's kind of my positive for this film. And no, those positives, they're all amazing. I think all of that works really well. Oh, wait, I did forget to mention something. I love the set design for this film. The set design and... What's his name? Oh, yeah, the set design is amazing. I love the sets and how they use it in this film. The acting is also really good. No matter what, they're pretty good. It's pretty good, you know. Now, here is where I start to get to problems, okay? I may talk about these problems a lot more because I think they're a lot easier to talk about. Normally, that's the case. But, okay, let's get into it. First off, the writing is not the best. My flaws with the film and how it's written, how the plot is very hard to describe why I don't like it. But I don't think it's that good, especially in the second act where it's just what? Like generally or not second act, like the last 40 minutes are just so odd, and and I'll get to the response of that's the point, it's supposed to be like that in a second. Actually not a second, probably in like 5 minutes, maybe longer. But I really don't. I mean, this also goes in with the pacing issues of this film, but moreover, also the writing. Like, Clark becomes a villain just, I won't say randomly, because they were showing his bad tendencies from the very start. But then he becomes he becomes an human eating, scalping their brains out. Like, he killed his assistant manager. Like, I feel like we need some more scenes of him becoming a guy that sure is malmannered and is not the best, to a psychopath, to a complete other murdering psychopath. I think we missed that step. I will say the ending, what? It just, I mean, I don't want to say it just ends, because that's how films work, they end, but it just ends. We're in a scene. It feels like we're still gonna continue this story. It's still keep on going. We're getting more, and I'll talk about why it's having a sequel is not a good defense for it. But still, and then we just in a scene with Mary. Boom, movie's done. What? What? You're just going like that. Like, I feel like this movie. Like, I was watching with someone, and I turned over to him, and I was like, we need another hour to this film. Like, not just for the ending, but also the scenes in the middle where we're missing a lot. Like, you need a lot more time in this film. And yeah, that's not even just to explain the lore. Of course, I did not expect them to do every single thing in the Backrooms lore in one movie. I'm not a big Backrooms fan. I've actually never even seen it. But I know that there is a lot of lore, especially with this non-linear storytelling. Which I understandably, of course, they couldn't put that into a, not even like 2-hour movie, you know, but they could have done more. And the excuse now is, well, there's a sequel, which I will say, that makes me more confident. I am a bit more excited for the movie now that I know there's a sequel. There's just only one problem. They didn't know that. From my knowledge, A24 is not that keen on giving sequels. I don't, to be fair, I'm not the biggest A24 knowledge person, but I don't think they give me sequels, and Kane Barson, I don't think he ever intended for a sequel, except, you know, the movie did well, and they were like, hey, we need a sequel now, you know. I don't really think he wanted a sequel. He never implied a sequel. There was no sequel in plan. And this movie, for all they knew, could have done terribly. I mean, there was a good chance that it wasn't going to do terribly, and since it had low budget, yeah, it was probably going to make its money. But there was also a high chance that it could have not done well, you know? And maybe the actors would ask for more since it's a bigger movie franchise then. Of course, when you're some small indie movie, they're not going to ask for much. But when you actually have a really successful movie, then maybe you're going to have more, you know? So they had no, like, of course, there was probably going to be a sequel. There's a high chance there would be, but there was no confirmation. So if there was never going to be a sequel, if he was just like, hey, no, I'm not going to make a sequel, then we would have just had an ending where it's nothing. It's a nothing burger ending because it's just a random scene that it feels like they're cutting their movie short, which is, I don't like it. That's my pacing problems with the film. And how, of course, they're missing a lot of scenes. It feels rushed and slow. Actually, not slow. It feels rushed and slow at the same time. It feels like the pacing is just so random in this film. It feels like we're missing so much, but then in certain moments it feels so slow, and actually it's just really odd pacing, and because of the time restraints and, you know, the fact that they're missing some very important scenes, like, you know, Clark actually becoming more of a villain-esque character, yeah, we needed more to this film with this pacing. And let's get back to the writing, I guess. So, the writing is just very odd. It's just very odd with how during, especially like I said in the second act, like the dining room scene, the actors really kind of had to carry for that, because like the writing was just very weird. Honestly, the film is just very weirdly written in how it is. It's like generally when people say what they say that this movie is like telling the person what a dog is, to describe a dog, someone who's never seen a dog, describe a dog, and then tell them to write it down. Yeah, that's how I can describe this movie. I really just cannot describe my problem with the writing, but I think they are quite severe. Also, the plot, it is an existent plot, but, like, it's just not a good one. I mean, sure, the Clark dude, he finds out the backrooms, he explores the backrooms, he brings other people, they die, then his therapist I told about earlier went to check up on him, went to backrooms, yeah, that's the plot, right? You know, but then it's just so weirdly structured, so weirdly paced, and so weirdly written, that I'm just like, what's going on? Yeah. Again, I'm going to talk about why this film being confusing is not a positive. It's moreover a negative. But, yeah, so I'm just going to end my review here. If you don't really care about what I'm going to say about the defenses and criticisms, leave the film, leave this video. But, basically, I think it's just a very solid 8 out of 10 film. Honestly, that may be a bit too high. I feel like this is filmed like an objective 6, maybe at best a 7. Because the writing, the plot, and the pacing of this film is generally that of like a 5 out of 10 film. But I love the vibe, I love the lore, and I really enjoy the themes, which I feel like is more in line with a 9 out of 10 film. So I don't really know exactly how to do this, to how to rate it. Because it's really bad in some aspects, but then it's really good in others. But both of them interlap with each other to create an overall film. And I don't think I'll ever watch again. Maybe if they make a sequel, I'll watch it in preparation for the sequel. But currently, I'm just like, why would I? You know, it feels just very odd. Anyways, I'll talk about the criticisms that some people levy toward this film and why it's not good. Okay, anyone saying it's just like a 0 out of 10 film, you're kind of just wrong. But, yeah, the first off thing I've been seeing is people being like, it's not like my Roblox game. Okay, people need to understand something. I don't even, like I said, I haven't seen any backwards content. I don't play the games. I don't do all that. But, like, even then, I know that the Backrooms isn't something made by Kane Parsons. It's some random thing that this guy just happened to be the most popular because he had the best lore. That's what I've heard. I heard he has best lore. Again, I don't watch backwards content. So yeah, all those games, all those other analog horror things, everything else that's not made by Kane Parsons has nothing to do with his Backrooms lore. So you shouldn't have walked in expecting Shrek in the Backrooms like that one Roblox game you played. It's really dumb. All those games, all those, I don't know, are there books? All that is not related to Kane Parsons' Backrooms. It is a different thing, so you shouldn't expect something that's completely unrelated in that movie. So that's just obviously dumb criticism. Also, then there's just people being complete idiots, where they're like, this movie had no plot, no themes, no anything, and it's like, it did. Now, you can critique that it's bad. For example, I think the writing in this film is pretty bad. The plot in this film is all over the place, and yeah, pretty bad and incoherent, but like, I'm not gonna say that it has no plot or has no writing, because that's just not true. Also, there's some really idiotic people online being like, guys, this is just scenes for 1 hour and 45 minutes. What do you think a movie is? What do you think a movie is? That's exactly what a movie is. All it is scenes. Like, there's some idiots online saying that, which I feel like hurts the criticism towards the movie, because then there's just so many idiots online, and everyone just loves to throw around the word media illiterate. So they're like, oh, you give a critique for this film, you're media illiterate because you don't understand this, because you're just grouping them in together with the idiot saying it's a 0 out of 10 worst film ever, you know? Anyways, I don't actually have much to talk about the terrible criticisms because it's obvious why they're terrible. But One thing I want to talk about, which not many people like to mention, is the terrible defenses for this film. Okay, first off, this is the one that I see the most. People are like, it's too confusing. Then in comment sections where people like do the quotes, it's like, it's too confusing, then they do an all caps. That's the point! Yeah. You never really want a confusing film. You want a complex film. You can't, I mean, you don't have to have a complex film, but if you want to have something I think people are misusing the word confusing and thinking it has the same definition of complex. Here's my description for the words and how they relate in film. Complex is like, wow. Like, you're in shock. In how it is very complicated in what's happening. Some parts you can't understand, but you're locked in, you know? What confusing is like, wow, what the hell did I just watch? Because you don't because it doesn't explain it well enough to understand, and it's very incoherent. Another example is like, let's say you're watching a performance. A confusing performance is you're watching it, sure, but by the end you can pick out nothing. Sure, it's really complicated, but they don't do anything to show you anything. You can pick out nothing from that performance. A complicated performance would be, complex performances, sure, maybe you aren't fully knowledgeable about every aspect, but once it gets to its finish, you understand it. That is the difference between confusing and complicated. Backgrounds is confusing. And you may say, and again, that doesn't ignore that is the point. Well, I'm going to get to that in a second. Also, confusing immediately has a negative denotation. Like, if you add confusing to something, it is almost always, actually, I won't even add almost, it is, actually, fine, I will add almost. It's almost always, like 97% of the time, it has a negative denotation to it. So, yeah, you don't really want something to be confusing. And here's my example. Sure, maybe Kane Parsons really did want it to be super confusing, right? That was his goal. Okay, that doesn't mean it's good. Like, my example that I've been giving to people is that Rian Johnson, his goal was to deconstruct and break apart and basically just character assassinate Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. But can we say that that's a good thing? Is character assassinating a good thing? Well, just break apart the words. Take assassination, the word added to character. Does that have a positive denotation? No. That assassination is almost always negative. Like, it relates to death, destruction, just breaking something apart, right? It's ruining something. So, was Rian Johnson, when he on purposely ruined Luke Skywalker's character? But that was the point, so that means it's a good thing. Because that's when you just say that's the point for it being confusing. You say it's not confusing to me, okay, how? But, like, you can say that, but saying that's the point, you don't want a confusing film, ever. Confusing, like I said, already has a negative denotation. Just because you want to make a confusing film doesn't mean it's good. Some writers want to do something, but it can be bad, you know? And yeah, just don't make a confusing film. There's a reason why when people, you will almost never hear confusing used as a positive word when describing any piece of media. It is almost always negative. And just because Kane Parsons wanted to make a confusing film doesn't mean that was a good decision. And the other one I see is when people are like, it has no plot, and they're like, it's a Backrooms movie, what did you expect? What? Hey, that's not even the right criticism. It has a plot, just not a good one. It has a plot. A very clear plot. Like I said, not a good one. But, like, when you say, would you expect it to have a plot? You know, like, all movies have? All good movies have? Yes, all movies have and need a plot. You know, a plot is kind of a necessity for a film. And honestly, if you lack a plot, yeah, you're gonna be a terrible film. You are literally right. Both of them, those are the main defending things I've seen to these videos where it's like, it's meant to be like this, it's meant to be too confusing, it's meant to have a wonky, non-existent plot, which it doesn't have a non-existent plot, I want to make that clear. It just has a not that good of one. Anyways, you are making the movie terrible yourself. You don't want a movie to be confusing. That is inherently a bad thing for a movie. You don't want your movie to have no plot. That is a necessity for a movie. Like, sure, you can argue that a confusing movie can sometimes work. Okay, maybe. But a movie without a plot will never work, because you know what a movie always needs? A plot. It is a basic necessity for a film. Anyways, so yeah, in my opinion, it's not a masterpiece or anything. It's not god-awful. It's like, honestly, I am kind of stretching to put it at an 8. I feel like a more realistic rating based on what I think of it is like a 7. But I'm going to give it an 8 to be kind. And overall, would I recommend this film? I don't know. If you're like analog horror, if you like vibes of just like sort of like creepy analog horror, if you like analog horror, see the movie. If you want a plot, if you're like a person who like you don't know much about analog horror, it's not like a genre that you prefer. I mean, I don't know much about it, but like if you just or you don't like that type of vibe, this like creepy vibe of mysterious and ambiguity. If you like are just like, okay, that's a solid vibe, I don't care for it much, and you're actually looking for good writing, good plot, and good pacing, things that are pretty crucial to a film, don't watch this movie. But if you just are there for the vibe and lore, if you like just a good vibe and good lore, then yeah, watch the film. Overall, I think it's like an 8 out of 10 that realistically should be a 7 out of 10, but yeah, that's just my opinion.